Hello, this is the induction for applied psychology and applied sociology. We'll just take you through the various elements of induction, and if you have any questions at the end of it, then you can direct them either to Louise.wright or to myself, robin.herne, via email. And we'll give you the email addresses in question as we go along. So first off, I'd like to say welcome to the degree and thank you for signing up with us and wanting to study psychology and sociology here. Hopefully your next 3 years, for those of you who are full-time or longer than that, for anybody who is doing part-time, will be thoroughly enjoyable and you'll make plenty of friends and learn all sorts of new and entertaining things, as well as reading your way through a small forest's worth of books. As you go along, you'll learn a number of skills. So not only will you learn about psychological theories and sociological theories, but you'll learn how to give presentations if you don't already know how to do that, in terms of projecting yourself, in terms of trying to make potentially complicated information accessible to the audience that you're delivering that information to, of engaging them and handling Q&A sessions and all sorts of aspects involved in both creating a PowerPoint or a Prezi presentation or one of the various other packages available, but also the actual performance of the presentation and delivering it. Likewise, you'll be writing lots of essays and reports and various assignments as you go along. You'll be able to learn all sorts of literacy skills, and if English is not your first language, then the college does provide a variety of support and assistance with polishing up your grammar, your punctuation and so forth, and improving the literacy side. You learn to work with other people. Some of the presentations, for example, are solitary ones, just you giving a presentation to the audience, but others are team presentations where you're working with at least 1 or 2 or 3 other students to create your presentations, and that can be a challenge. Obviously, if you ask somebody to do something and they forget to do it or they have problems, how do you adapt and adjust and change, all of which are seen as good skills to have for future jobs. I do appreciate that as the majority of you are mature students, you may well already have this direct lived experience within jobs you currently or previously have had, where you have to get on with people, even if sometimes you don't always necessarily like them, or you have to adapt and adjust as they ask you to do things which you can't do, or you ask them to do things which they don't do for one reason or another, and you have to work around that accordingly. So although team presentations can be frustrating, these are seen as useful skills to have and learn and develop. Likewise, you engage in research, not only through books and journal articles, but on the vast realm of the internet. And as I'm sure you'll appreciate, there is an awful lot of rubbish out there on the internet. So one of these skills you learn is how to distinguish vital, useful, worthwhile information from nonsensical information, unhelpful forms of information. And to utilize that information you gain in your research to help formulate arguments to decide what it is you think about things based upon the weight of evidence that you've seen through the research you've conducted, and how to convince other people, either through presentation, through debate, or through writing an assignment, how to convince other people of the correctness of whichever position it is that you wish to take on that particular subject, because you are presenting a well-structured argument with evidence and research to back it up. Part of writing a report or an essay is also the art of concision. It's very, very easy to waffle at great length and repeat yourself, as I'm starting to do now. So it's quite a skill to be able to say what you want concisely and precisely, which is why essays and assignments have word limits. And there may be days when you find those word limits frustrating because you'd like to say a lot more than the word limit allows you to, but that is the challenge in and of itself. Can you convey what you want to convey in fewer words, in a more precise form? Within psychology, you get to participate in experiments. There are other forms of research you get to participate in with sociology, such as observations, for example. This is where you conduct your own studies, you put people to the test, you develop theories and encourage other people, which could be other students in the same class, it could be students on other courses in the college that you've roped in, it could be members of the general public that you are conducting your experimentation upon. And we go through the ethics of how to conduct an experiment and what to avoid doing, how to keep it an ethical experiment or research project of one other sort. And you have the fun, hopefully, of conducting those experiments. At the end of most experiments, you will have generated some kind of numerical data, people's scores in various tasks, for example, and then you start to statistically analyse the data you have generated. And we will teach you how to do that. And just as we have the literacy support for people who may have challenges with written English, so if you find maths a little difficult or challenging, there is numeracy support within the college which we can direct you to. That's both the literacy and numeracy are free. But you learn how to conduct statistical analysis, both of your own data, but also when you're looking at reports written by other people and they may quote statistics at you. 20% of people think this, 54% of people do that. You'll be able to look at the claims they're making and work out whether they're valid or not. Because it's quite easy, as we all know perhaps from listening to political speeches and so forth, to see people who quote statistics which, if you look at them with any degree of depth, don't really mean an awful lot, but sound impressive. So one of the things we try to teach you to do is not only conduct your own statistical analysis, but also to delve into other people's and see whether or not the claims they are making are backed up by the evidence, which is all part of critiquing work, seeing where the strengths and weaknesses reside within any particular project or essay or book or journal article. These are the current members of staff. I say current because, as you'll appreciate, over a period of 3 years for full-time students and longer for part-time students, members of staff retire, they get other jobs elsewhere, new people join the team. So these are the people at the moment. Obviously, I can't guarantee that in 3 years' time the team will be precisely the same as it is now. But you'll gradually meet these people as you go along. Dr. Louise Wright on the left of the screen is the root leader for psychology, and she teaches a number of psychological modules which we'll touch on as we go. Laura Newell teaches psychology at level 6, so you get to meet her in the 3rd year, although you may of course bump into her in the corridor before then. Karen Marriott teaches sociology, one of the modules within the 1st year, so you'll meet her quite soon, within a matter of days. Jill Cockman also teaches psychology, at the moment specialising in cyber psychology and teaching that particular module, which deals with how people behave when they're online and how the experience of being online shapes the way people think and feel and respond and behave and interact. And finally, that's me at the bottom of the screen there, Robin.herne. I am the root leader for sociology. I teach both psychological and sociological modules and a few other modules and other courses which you don't particularly need to know about because you're focusing on psychology and sociology. So if you have an issue with a particular module, you don't understand the assignment questions, or you're not feeling very well one day, or your car is broken down and you can't turn up to the lecture, then contact the person who teaches that particular module. If it's more of an issue with the overall structure of the course, perhaps you've got concerns about if you had a falling out with another student, or there's some big situation in your life which you're concerned might be affecting your studies, then if it's to do with psychology, talk to Dr. Louise Wright, and if it's to do with sociology, talk to me, and if it's to do with both, talk to both of us. So how do you talk to us? Well, in the first instance, you can of course speak to us in lectures, but you can also phone us at the college on 701 301, and they will put you through to the staff room, or you can email us on the various email addresses that you can see on screen there. Now, I'm one of the few people at the college who works full-time, and most other people work part-time, and it's the rule within the college that for people who work part-time, they should only respond to emails and phone calls and so forth on the days when they're actually working, because the rest of the week they may have other jobs or family commitments or what have you. And so on the days when they're not being paid to do college stuff, they're not meant to be responding to emails. So if you email somebody at 10 o'clock on a Saturday evening, it may not be likely that you'll get a response until at least the Monday, if they work on the Monday, and if they only work on the Tuesday, you won't get a response to the Tuesday. It's not because they're ignoring you, it's simply that's the rule that we respond to at the moment at college. Now, we're encouraged to respond to you via your university email address, which you will, if you don't already have it, you will be given one quite soon. It ends with @uos.ac.uk. Now, in the first week or two, whilst you're waiting to get your email address, you might well be emailing us on your own personal email accounts, which is fine for the start of the year until your UOS address is set up, whereupon we are meant to respond to you only through that address. That's part of the college rules and guidelines. I appreciate it might get a bit annoying flipping between different accounts, so you already know how to do it. We can explain to you how to do it. You can set up your UOS account so it redirects messages to your private email address, so you don't have to remember to keep logging in to more than one account. You can get them all redirected to yourself. Makes it easier perhaps for you. Now, obviously this year we are affected by coronavirus, and it's a very odd situation, changing all of the time. Every time you turn the news on, there is different advice and information and rules and regulations coming from government and doctors and one thing and another. So we are learning ourselves as we go along how to handle this situation. Now, the response that the college has taken, which will be in place certainly for the first semester and possibly for the second semester, unless there is a miracle cure found or something of that sort happens, is that the lectures will alternate 1 week in college and 1 week virtual. So your first week in college, you will have a lecture in person. You'll turn up to whichever classroom it is, meet the other students, meet the lecturer, and be delivered a lecture in the old-fashioned way. On the subsequent week, you'll be at home and the lecturer will be at home, and they will deliver the lecture to you electronically. Now, some lecturers prefer to use Microsoft Teams, so they'll set up a group. They'll need your email address for that, and send you an invite, and you log on to the invite, and you can see the other students in their homes. Now, you don't have to have your camera on if you don't want people to see that you're having a bad hair day or the ironing is piled up behind you and you haven't done it yet or something. So you can turn the camera off, but it's obviously useful if we can hear you when you're asking questions. So you can turn the sound on when you wish to ask questions. And the lecturer will deliver you a lecture, and you'll be able to see the PowerPoint images on the screen via Microsoft Teams. Now, those Microsoft presentations can be recorded. It's a safeguarding measure so that we can keep track of people's questions and queries, and it also helps you potentially to look back on the recordings if you're able to access them and double check what the lecturer said about some particular theory or another that you didn't quite understand first time round. And you can engage, you can ask questions, you can do all the sorts of things you would normally do as part and parcel of a standard lecture. Other lecturers prefer to pre-record their lectures with services such as Loom, in which you can see the slides moving past on the screen and hear the lecturer's voice. What you can't do with Loom is ask questions. So those lecturers who prefer to use Loom will also be supplementing with a Microsoft Teams Q&A session, which will be much shorter than a standard lecture, because basically they will say, did you understand the theory about so-and-so thing? And you'll either say, yes I did, or no I didn't, can you explain that bit again? And then things can be re-explained to you. It's more of a sort of a live experience that way. But each lecturer will explain to you in person when you meet them how they prefer to conduct the virtual lessons. So the short version of this is that you will get all of the lectures that you are paying for. Some of them will be live and some of them will be electronic. If you have any issues with internet service and things like that, please let us know at the start of the course so we can make adjustments accordingly. Now, when you turn up in class for the standard lectures, your name is ticked off on the sheet that you've been in attendance. When you're engaging with the virtual experience, obviously we can see that you've tuned into Microsoft Teams, and so we tick your name off accordingly. And if you log on to Brightspace in order to listen to a Loom recording, then Brightspace takes a note of your name and it informs the lecturer that so-and-so student has listened to this lecture, and then we tick your name off on the register. And that forms part of your overall pattern, because obviously if you're missing a lot, then Sarah Ellison at Student Support will get in contact with you and say, are you okay, are you unwell, are you having problems, etc., and keep track of you that way, because we'd like you to have the full experience of university. You are, after all, paying for it, and it's a shame if you miss too much for reasons that maybe can be adjusted for. So what are your year one modules? Well, on psychology, in the first year you have Introduction to Applied Psychology, Psychology in Action, and Psychology and Society. If you're a full-time student, you'll do all three of those. If you're a part-time student, you can pick one or two or even all three of them. And for sociology, first year you have Making Sense of Modernity, Introduction to Applied Sociology, and Contemporary Social Inequalities. And again, you can do all three as a full-time student, or one or two or three of them as a part-time student. So we'll start with the psychology modules. So the first one there is Introduction to Applied Psychology. And this is 9:15 AM on a Thursday morning in room STO42 in the STEM Centre. If you don't know where that is, ask the reception when you arrive and they'll direct you to the correct room. And that module is run by Dr. Louise.Wright, and she will explain to you what all of the major psychological theories are, the big names like Sigmund Freud, who you can see in the photograph there. Who were the big thinkers? The first year module mostly deals with thinkers who are passed into the afterlife, no longer with us, and we do address contemporary current thinkers and theorists, but we tend to get onto the living ones later on in the year and into second year and third year. So first year is about laying the bedrock for the historical theories and their strengths and their weaknesses. So you'll look at psychodynamic theory, behaviorism, psychobiological theory, cognitive theory, and so forth. On Thursday afternoons, you have Psychology in Action in room STO42 with me. Now, Psychology in Action lasts the entire year, so whereas the previous module only happens up until Christmas and then gets over with, this is what's termed a long, thin module, so these lectures are shorter. These are 1.5 hour lectures, whereas the previous module I mentioned is a 3-hour lecture, and that does include a coffee break partway through. So within these year-long short lectures, you find out about research, how to conduct experiments, what are the rules and regulations and guidelines on conducting experiments, and observations and surveys and questionnaires and a whole raft of other forms of psychological research. You'll also get to design and conduct an experiment of your own, and you'll learn how to do the maths, which, if you are a little bit maths adverse, don't worry, all maths basically boils down to adding, dividing, multiplying and subtracting. If you can do those things, then you can cope with the maths. So we take it step by step by step and explain how to do it one stage at a time, and it's straightforward. So that's Psychology in Action. And then you have, in the second semester after Christmas, Psychology and Society, which is in 9:15 in the mornings on Thursday in STO42 with Dr. Louise.Wright again, and here you learn about social interactions in psychology. So a lot of psychology focuses on the individual, how people in isolation think and feel and behave. Social psychology looks at people in groups, how we behave en masse, group dynamics, how we interact with other people. Things like prejudice and altruism and how we interact on a large scale, how we view other people en masse. So you'll explore those ideas. Which takes us into sociology. Now your first sociology module is a Tuesday morning, 9:15 in the first semester in room STO 43, that's with me, and it is making sense of modernity. And you may ask, what is modernity? With the Industrial Revolution, there was a huge change in society in Britain and everywhere else in the world, although we keep the focus on Britain to make it manageable. But we will make mention of experiences in other countries as well. So we went from being a mostly rural farming country, with 80% of the population living in villages, to 80% of the population living in cities, where all of the factories were. Because factories were springing up all over the place as a result of the Industrial Revolution, inventing machines that could do the work of 50 people at a fraction of the speed. Or a fraction of the time, I should say, because everything was far quicker and far speedier. And that led to a lot of changes in society. So part of the modernity module is looking at life in cities, life where instead of being in a small village where you know everyone's name, you live in a city of tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people, and you hardly know anyone. So we look at the negative sides, the isolation, the sense of being fractured and separate, but we also look at the positive impacts of modern life. So how it revolutionised the position of women, how we changed a lot of laws that may seem very old-fashioned these days to create more freedoms for people, more opportunities, more choice, greater education for people of all social classes, not just the very well-off. So there's a whole raft of both positive and negative factors in modern living that we will be looking at in this module. Then you have Introduction to Applied Sociology with Karen Marriott, and that's 1:15 on a Tuesday afternoon in STO 46. This is an all-year-long module, so these will be the hour-and-a-half lectures for this particular module, where you get to learn about all of the big sociological thinkers, like the chap in the photograph, who is Michel Foucault, one of the big French thinkers and sociologists. So you know what are the big thoughts, the big theories, the big ideas. Again, much like the psychology module, most of the people you look at in this module are long since dead, because it's the historical basis of sociology, and we move on to the living, more contemporary sociologists later on in the course as we go along. So you learn the big theories here. And finally, after Christmas, in the second semester, on a Tuesday morning, 9:15 a.m. in STO 46, we get on to contemporary social inequalities with me. You'll appreciate that all societies, the whole world over, there are divisions between people. Different groups of people who fare differently on various measures. So between levels of wealth, levels of success, levels of who's healthy, who's unhealthy, levels of lifespan, levels of education, all sorts of other measurements. And there are often differences between people according to social class. That's the biggest difference of all. It is the amount of money somebody has in their bank and the impact that has on their whole life. But there are also differences, for example, between men and women, between different ethnic groups, between different religious groups, between people of different educational levels, between people of different sexual orientations. There's a whole raft of different issues that we can look at. Your own political outlook, I emphasise, is your entire personal choice. You don't have to be particularly left-wing or particularly right-wing or particularly anything to engage with this module, because we look at all political perspectives on the left, the right and the centre to gain different points of view from different sociologists about why the world is the way it is and how things can be improved. For those sociologists who think they can be improved, not everyone does. So we'll explore all those sorts of issues as we go along in this particular module, and learn to engage with each other and discuss what might be quite sensitive ideas that impact everyone to some extent, and discuss them in a calm, rational, engaging, fair fashion. So those are your modules in the first year. If you would like to get ahead and keep on top of your studies, the key thing to do is read around. Read books on psychology, read books on sociology. Each of the module guides has its own book list, but you can of course read books on other related subjects and by other authors as well. If you're not sure whether a book's any good or not, you can ask your module tutor if they would recommend that particular text. As well as reading, you can go on to things like YouTube and other similar kinds of platforms where you have uploaded lectures by psychologists and sociologists and all sorts of people. So you can listen to those as well as listening to your actual lecturers who teach the course, and explore ideas and think about them and bring those ideas into class debates so that we can discuss and bounce ideas around with each other in a friendly, supportive fashion, and look at the evidence as to whether an idea is supported by research or not. Having a notebook as you go along is a good idea, whether it's the pen and paper old style, or whether you prefer to type up your notes as you go along. All of the classrooms in the STEM Centre have computers, so you can either type your notes up on one of those computers, or if you prefer to bring in your own laptop or your own iPad or whatever and type on that, that's perfectly fine. A lot of people find it useful to colour coordinate their notes and all sorts of techniques like that, which you'll learn about as we go along. And please do, key issue, ask questions, whether you ask them in class or whether you email your tutor because you only thought of the question at 3 in the morning. However you prefer to ask your questions is fine. That's how we learn, by saying I didn't understand that, or how does idea A relate to idea B. Explore these ideas, explore the concepts, engage, share, enjoy the topics as you learn about them. The more you enjoy it, the better you'll learn from it. Which brings us to the end. Now, obviously you can't ask questions of me here because this is a Loom recording, but as I said at the start, if you would like to email me or you would like to email Louise, we can address your questions, whether it's to do with particular topics being taught in the various modules, or styles of teaching, or any accommodations you would like us to make, or indeed just general practical issues about the course or the layout of the college or anything like that. We will do our best to answer your questions. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in class. Enjoy the course.